Hi Kerbinauts, welcome back. It's been about a year since I've done the basic how-tos on Kerbals, but I've got a few friends addicted to Kerbal now, and they always ask me some questions about how the game works, functions, how to get, especially one of my friends said, how do I get a satellite into orbit? So I'm going to do that quick build for him. And probably do about a 20-30 minute video on the build, and then hopefully just a 15-minute on flight. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to just start from scratch and go from there. So we'll just go to the vehicle building, and I'm just going to go ahead and go through these tabs real quick. I'll also go through the building buttons and basic controls of the ship on construction. So here we've got our control mods, which are going to control our vessels. We have manned control VODs. These are for the jets. These are for space or space shuttle. So this one to this one, that includes all these, take Kerbinauts. These right here are robot only. These are AI. These are non-manned. These are manned. So then we've got our propulsion tab, which includes all our rockets, as you can see here, that are dark. We've got a solid booster section that doesn't require any kind of fuel. We've got jet engine parts. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go ahead and select. We're going to go ahead and go with our square. Now what I'm doing is moving the view by holding the right mouse button and moving the mouse. You can see how it moves corresponding to my mouse movement. I can also move the stage up and down by the mouse key. If I want to zoom in on a part, I can use the number pad plus. So that's the number pad plus, and number pad minus zooms out. Okay, so that's real quick. So just remember that. I'll retouch base on that. So there's our control pad, control module tab. We already went through that. And here you see nothing's darked out. You can't really slick a part unless you have a control mod, or it depends on what kind of build you're doing. So we're just going to start off with our square so we can see all the parts. Here's our rocket parts. This is the jet engine along with the jet port, and then a supersonic jet. The jet engines work on a fuel basis, fuel only. These have fuel, you can see as liquid fuel 150. It says 160 liquid fuel. I'm looking at the resources, the bubble, second bubble from the bottom of the display window. It's showing liquid fuel 160. These jet engines do not require engine oxygen in the tank because they are using the atmosphere. But once they get into no atmosphere, outer space, the engines will no longer work. They require air intake, atmosphere, in order to run. You can't use them in space. Therefore, you'll need to use the rockets, or solid rockets. Solid rockets are just packed like gunpowder. Once you light them, they burn, and once they burn, they're done. You can't refuel them. These are the rocket attachments that burn liquid fuel. You can see this one has liquid fuel and an oxidizer. The oxidizer is needed to burn a rocket in the vacuum of space where there's no atmosphere. So you have to bring your own atmosphere, and that's the oxidizer, the 220. It has liquid fuel 180. These are solids. They don't require any kind of fuel. They just burn. Like I said, they're kind of like packed in gunpowder. And then you have a couple different rocket modules. Some the gimbal movement, some don't have gimbal movement. This is a nuclear reactor. Now we have also RCS fuel. It's these tanks, 1, 2, and 3 tank. Those tanks are used for RCA, which is used in the control tab parts. We'll get to those right next. This is a fuel line for transferring fuel from one tank to another, but we won't be using that in that build. So we'll just get to that later in other episodes. Control tab contains 4 parts that are computer controlled assistant modules. You have a advanced SAS, a larger one, and then they have a SAS module. The advances are a little better than the regular one. Don't know why they have it's just a weight issue. And then you have the avionics package for planes. It doesn't really work for rockets, just for planes. And then these things use wings. and then these rockets to control your ship's pitch, angle, rotation, all that stuff. Here, I'll show you what these parts look like real quick. One's just a jet. Another one is 4 jets, giving you back and forth, sideway, up and top movement. And you use those computers to control those jets, and then those rockets, the RCA rockets, and they use monopellant. You see the monopellant 750 uses a different fuel from the jet rockets and the boosters. So remember, RCS rockets use RCS fuel. So without the RCS fuel, your RCS rockets will not fire. Okay, we got structural tab. Structural tab contains elements, connectors, and such. Steel parts, steel beams. Let me see if I can get the steel beam. Steel beams and plates. Now, you can see it seems like you're restricted on how you can put these parts, but I'm going to show you something to deal with your moving keys. As far as your pilot and control keys, they also are used for construction, and those are the WASD keys and the QE key. So that is the WASD key, and then also Q and E key. S and W key pitch it up and down, just like if you were playing. Right and left is the A and D. A and D key will flip it on the 90-degree axis. Again, S and W, A and D, and then rotational is Q and E. Q, and E. So we got flipping and rotational. And then if you want to do multiple parts, this is a symmetry thing. What you can do is, if I want to do 2 parts equally distanced from each other, or 3 parts, it's basing it off the center of your post. So as you can see, as I attach these, it's working off the center of our object. And then we can continue up to 6, 8. If you hold the shift key while hitting the X key, the X key is your symmetry key. So if you just hold that, hit the X key, it goes up. If you hold the shift key and hit the X key, it will go down. So this is a little shortcut for your builds. I'll say if you want to put this thing on a small angle, let's see if we can get this thing on an angle. You hold your shift key, and then again with S, W, or your A, D, or your Q, E keys, you can adjust your part at 5-degree increments. So then you can start doing some pretty interesting builds, and then as such. Now this is set as freeform. I'll show you the angle snap here in a few seconds. So that was just a quick on the symmetry tool and changing the pitch of the part. I figured I'd just show you while I had this big flat piece. It was pretty easy to show you. So now other pieces, kind of like radio antennas and stuff. If you want to delete an item, you can hit the delete key and it'll delete. If you put on a part, take it off, and then realize you want to put it back, you can hit Control Z to undo your last move. It'll reproduce the part that you took off if it's floating onto the piece. So you can just do that by just delete key again. These are decouplers. These are what uses that change your staging between rockets. This is a stabilizer that helps stabilize your rocket while it's on the launch pad. These are your radial decouplers. If you want to put rockets on the side of a rocket and then detach them later on, you'll use these. These are your stack decouplers, which separate the stack. And then this is kind of like a three-way stack module. It's just a part, so it allows you to put 3 rockets centered. It's kind of just a connector. They have a 2 connector also, that if you want to do 2 rockets instead of 3. So And then we will go on to the wings. The wings, you have control flaps, nose cones, other wing parts, just general wing parts. These are winglets. Let me see if I can zoom on that winglet. So the winglet, the whole wing moves. The delta winglet, you have to look at different types of wings. This flap moves, this whole wing moves. This wing will pitch, this wing will stay fixed. Only thing that will move is the flap. So each wing will do different things. Some wings don't even have any flaps. This is a delta wing, and it's just a wing structure. It has no flaps. You would have to attach these flaps to it in order to mimic this flap. This would be this, and then the wing would be this. So let's just go ahead and get rid of all our parts here. Clean up our build. We got the utility button. Oh yeah, sorry, forgot. Wings. Then you get your jet parts. You got intakes. You remember the jet engines need air to burn. This is an intake. This thing keeps your engines cool so they don't overheat. And these are the different type of inlets. This is for jets. It looks a little cooler. I mean, you can see how it's a jet intake where you've got scoops, which you can put on the side of your plane so it looks like a scoop inlet, or you get the traditional radial fan look. So those are the engine parts, are basically right here. Those that correspond with these engine parts. You can, I hope I can get this stuff. So that inlet would go for this engine, the jet engine. So, alright, we're going to go to utility tab. This includes like another module, so if you want to do a moon base and put Kerbals, can go inside the door and jump around and have a lot of fun. You have your battery packs for storing power when you're on the dark side. You have your reactor, which supplies power to your build regardless if you're on the sun or not. These are your solar panels. This is a big solar panel that extends. These are non-shielded, smaller panels. If you do a rover, you might want to do a shielded one where this opens up and your solar panel comes out. And obviously everybody knows what a solar panel does. It collects energy from the sun. This is an electric engine, which uses this fuel, Exxon gas, for fuel and electric to burn. But it still needs fuel. It's kind of bogus. It's an electric engine, but it still needs fuel. Don't understand. These are your coupling. These are for docking nodes. So you got a shielded one. You got a one that's on the side of a rocket. These doors open, and then a ring comes out. A ring kind of looks like this will come out of it. Allows you for docking. This ring allows for Kerbal transfer. This one is just for fuel, and this one is a large one. So if you want to do parts for a space station, you want a better connection, you can use these. I think those are Kerbal. Kerbals can pass through that one too. Basic ladder for your Kerbals. You get your landing wheels. They'll fold down. They always show you the up position. You've got parachutes, cone parachutes, a side mounted parachute. You've got your lights, which then again, if you want to start directing your lights, you hold the shift key for your 5-degree movements, and that's what's really good for the lights. You can change them around. You've got extendable ladders. Now they'll show you its extended form, but naturally it would be inside this box. Oops. Same along with this one. This one retracts. You can see it has a little door, and then there's a compartment. This whole ladder will retract, fold up inside there. But during the build, they show you its extended action. Normally it's all closed up, so I'm going to take that off. We don't need it. Then you got your wheels. You got little wheels versus some big, pretty monstrous ones. I don't know what you would use this one for, but my favorite is usually this one for my rovers, and then this one for my planes. It depends on the planes. So that's it for the utilities. So utilities are basically things that are functional. Batteries, collecting power, things that let you move around, parachutes, things that have action. They're parts that have a purpose, would be in your utility. Then you got your science tab, which is just some fun things, gadgets, temperature, astrometrics, gravity, all that fun stuff. So since this is a satellite, we're going to go ahead and use all these. These are the science. We want to take some readings. So let's just zoom in using the plus key on the number pad. Move my view up using the mouse key. And what I want to do is keep my, I want to snap a part to a grid. So what happens is, let me grab this one part here. I'm going to rotate this just for view. Now you can see it moves around pretty freely. It sort of, you got to kind of finical with its position, but you can basically put it anywhere you want. The snap to grid will force you into, I believe it's 15-degree increments along the center column of the ship. So you can move it up and down without any kind of pitch unless you get over. But as far as around the object, it's going to snap you into a grid, a 15-degree every increment grid, which is good for when you put stages around a rocket, or you're putting solar panels, this and that kind of stuff. Or if you just want to have an exact center snap, like if I could put this off to the side, which is fine, but if I want to put this directly center on my connection, my square, it's going to want to snap to that. And you can see also too, when I'm moving it around, it sort of doesn't want to stay. Like the grid is forcing me to snap every 15 degrees, but I'm having trouble putting this on the circle. Like I want to have this thing right on that dot, but for some reason it doesn't want to go right there. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't, because it doesn't know if you want to put it here or here, so it's having trouble figuring out what you want to do with this thing. So I usually move my view all the way down, so then the two bubbles will touch, and then the program knows exactly what you want to do. So that's a pretty easy way to connect modules. If you can, expose the bubble, so then the two bubbles can touch without. It knows for a fact you can't see the surface. That's the only way you're going to, you can see this surface, but you want it on the top. So the computer knows the only two connectors you can see right now is that one and that one. Boop, connection. Pretty easy. We're going to go with an antenna. What I want to do is go ahead and stick this antenna on the corner, and then I want to just angle it a bit. Remember how we talked about 5-degree increments? So I'm holding the shift key while doing the WS, A, and D. I could rotate it, but it's pretty, you can't rotate a long object. You wouldn't see it rotating. I showed you with the flat square, so you know what I'm talking about. So we got our antenna. Let's go ahead and stick on some of these modules. Now, these modules, as you can see, because I'm on the snap to grid, they kind of make it go in an angle, but I want to have it flat on the surface. So what I'm going to do is not force it to snap to any kind of angle, and that means I can put things flat on the surface of another object. So we're just going to go ahead and install our little science instruments. We've got a little thermometer here. Let's go ahead and put that there, put this here, and then maybe we can get away with this thing. Nope. Let's see, there's got to be a way I can put this all together. Fit all this junk on here. So there you go. I got my science instruments, base, control, communication. So we got that good. So our effects, these things really don't determine how the thing flies. It's just interesting. You can check out the readings on these gauges. You don't need communication. Your ship will fly without it. So what we do need is a way to collect power and store it. So I'm going to get some solar panels. I want 2 solar panels just to make the thing look kind of like a satellite. And since I kind of want to have it centered, I don't want to have it off-centered, because you can see the movement of the symmetry goes back and forth. So I want these things to be kind of centered, So I'll go back to snapping grid, and now it'll force me to snap the center. So now my pieces are nice and centered. And then now that I'm collecting power, I need a way to store that power. So we're going to put a battery on this, but I don't want 2 batteries. You see what it's trying to do? It's trying to put 2 batteries. And you see how the other one is red, this one is green. I can't put two batteries on while this thing's on the other side. That's why it's showing me red. It's not even showing me it. So again, I just want one battery. One. Snap the grid. Doop. Okay, so there's our satellite. Light, power, instruments, communication, and then control box. So this is going to be our final stage. This is what's going to be floating in space. So let's go ahead and put on a decoupler. Now what this decoupler will do is separate this part with the rest of my rocket. The way these decouplers work is it has an arrow pointing up. Whatever it's pointing at, it will disconnect from. So it will disconnect like this and fall away. If it was switched the other way, when it disconnected, the piece that you want to disconnect from will come away, and then this will be stuck to this because the arrow is pointing this way. It's detaching from that piece. I don't want to carry that thing around in space. It'll just ruin my design effects, and aesthetically it'll make it look pretty bad. So we're going to leave it up here, so we just want this. Now as you can see, I'm going to get pretty close to the ground as we build, so I want to move my build up higher. So what I'm going to do is hit our command pod. I'm going to zoom out using the number minus key again on the number pad, and then I can move my module up. I can move it sideways, you can move it all around your pad, but for now I just want to give myself plenty of space to continue this build. So we'll zoom in again using the plus key on the number pad. And then let's go ahead and, what I want to do is build a ship that can help me finalize my orbit before I put this thing in final orbit. I want to do all my fine tuning with a vessel instead of using this thing as a fine tuner. So I'm going to grab some fuel. We're going to need a control computer. Let's go ahead and grab a battery ring, and then we'll worry about how it's going to get power after that. So we got our decoupler. Let's go ahead and put our control computer. Oh, got too many things in the way here. Our control computer, we'll put our battery, we'll put our fuel tank. Now I'm going to put a rocket on this. I like using the atomic rocket because it uses far less fuel. It gives a pretty good punch for being in a vacuum of space. Most of the rockets don't really burn too well in the vacuum of space. They burn well getting to space, but some of them really, this is the best one for long distance travel. You can get to moon on this. You should be able to have plenty of fuel. So I'm a big favorite of the rocket, the atomic rocket. So we got that. We got our fuel. Remember, we can put the computer controlled module on here. So we need the rockets that we were going to use to control our ship. And usually I like having at least more than one. 2, 4 is ideal. You can see how this computer module has 4 blocks on it. That's going to represent my down, up, left, and right. And since I'm using these rockets to control how I'm moving the ship, I think I'm going to want to keep those on the center. So they'll help me control with my pitch, rotation, and back and forth. And instead of putting one individually on each one of these, I can make sure I'm still snapping to a grid, which will keep me locked into 0, 15, 30, 45, 90. But I want 4 of these. So let's go ahead and put 4. And we're putting them there. I like putting them up top, because if you imagine this like a pencil, and you had a pencil laying flat on a desk and you pushed on the center, the pencil would just roll, but it would stay in this position. But if you decided to touch the whole, if you tried to push the pencil, say, on the ends, then you can actually start pushing it. And it's far easier to push an object on the ends, if it's long, than just to push it in the center. Center, it would just it would just kind of move like this. We want the pitch. We want it to change its angle, dive, climb. So I'm putting them on the end so they can help with that. Can't put them on the rocket, so I can't put them down here. The only other option I would have is in the middle. And they work, but it's very bad place. It's very inefficient to put them in the middle of your object. So this is going to be our ship we're going to use to put this in final space. Now, don't forget too that since I added the RCS rockets, these things, I will need RCS fuel. That is very important. When you realize your rockets do not fire, you probably forgot to put one of these tanks on. These have 40 per hit. This one's 100. If I do 4 of these, that's 160. That gives me a little more. So again, just for symmetry and design, I want to keep this in line with this one just for aesthetic reasons. I want 4 tanks. I could have put 6, 8, but I'm just going to go with 4 just to keep things all pretty and such. Look how pretty that is. So that's going to be our orbital. This is going to be our second stage. This ship main responsibility is to get this thing in a perfect orbit. And when it does that, it will release it. And then this thing's basically garbage after that. So let's do the stage we need to get this up into the higher atmospheres. So we're going to go back again and get a decoupler. And you see the arrows pointing up. Now what's happened is the minute I attach this decoupler, it's going to cover the engine because it knows now that this is part of a stage, and while this thing's in flight, it's just going to cover the engine just for safety. So you can see the thing's covered, it's got a little nuclear symbol, and it's just basically shielding. When this thing comes off, so will the shield. So don't worry, this won't be attached. And we want the arrow pointing up because we don't want this staying with this. It will block the engine and your engine won't work. You want it to fall away with the rest of the stuff. So there's our decoupler. I'm going to go with Rocco Max just on the simplicity of this build. Then I'm also going to go ahead and put on a tank, RCS tank. I'm going to put that underneath this so we don't have any problems between the fuel tank and the rocket. I'll get an engine real quick. I'll explain that it's the Rocco Max. This is 650. That's 1500. We're going to go with the 1500. It's probably going to burn through fuel like crazy, but it's probably too much fuel. Let's go with this one. We're going to use solid rockets to help, so we don't need to have that much of a boost, and we'll probably burn out of fuel using that other rocket. But the reason why I'm taking RCS fuel is there'll be a point where I'm going to need to use these rockets to control this whole stack, but I don't want to burn the fuel in these little tanks controlling this whole stack because I'll run out of fuel. I'll basically run out of this fuel by the time I need to use this. So this fuel is just going to be used on this whole rocket to help not deplete these tanks. But I'll still need to use these rockets, so these rockets will use this fuel until I decouple. So that's how it's going to work. Alright, you got it? So we've got our main sail. This is basically our main build. We're going to add another stage. This is going to be the radials. What I'll do is go ahead and attach these to the side. I'm going to go ahead and put 4 of these. Let me zoom in. And let's go ahead and attach these. Oh, a little off angle. I'm trying to keep everything pretty symmetric and even. I'm going to go ahead and add these solid boosters to the radial decouplers. And so now you can see how these things work. When these get done, these will detach from this, allowing this to fall away. This stays put. These things stay onto this, so when they detach, they fall away also. So we got 4 solid boosters that will help push our main sail. When these burn out of fuel and this thing has reached a good speed, it can maintain its own speed. We just want to get it off the ground, and these will be perfect for that. Now, as I have my build, I don't want my rocket really technically sitting on these pads, you know. So what I'm going to do is add a structural element. These are launch stabilizers. These attach to your rocket, And when you launch your rocket, these arms detach from your rocket. So basically it's going to hold it off the ground until we light the rocket. Now, there's one more element I want to add. Remember, the SAS modules control wings also. I want to put some fins on my rocket at the bottom. These will help stabilize the flight while I'm in the lower atmospheres. Once I get to the higher atmospheres in zero space, wings won't work in space. Well, they work, they move, but they don't have any lift. That's why I'm not going to put any wings on this part. This part's going to be in space. This part's going to have to travel the whole way. And as wind passes through our build, these wings will help stabilize the bottom. So again, as I said, when you're pushing your pencil, at the first part of our flight, I'm not going to use the rockets. Rockets are very inefficient on low altitudes, but wings are very efficient. So at the first few altitudes, atmospheres, the wings will be helpful in stabilizing the bottom of the rocket, keeping it straight up and down. And then when I hit space, I will need the rockets to help stabilize the top. So the wings are going to help stabilize the bottom, keeping it up and down. The rockets will help keep the top from falling over. So there's our whole build. Now we're going to go through staging. We've got our wings, our decouplers, wings don't matter. Decouplers, side boosters, support arms, all this stuff. And as you can see, as you highlight, go over each part of the staging, it's going to highlight the part that the staging is dealing with. So as you can see now, I'm highlighting all four of these control arms, and it highlights all four of them at the same time. So what we're going to do is, I want these things to release my rocket as the engines fire. I don't want to release these things, let my rocket fall as it's trying to fire. I mean, I'm going down as I want to go up. It just doesn't make sense. So what I'm going to do is, while these things let go, this rocket will fire. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to move this whole group. Now you can see they're all highlighted green. If I want to select one object, I deselected it. These are green. Now if I want to move those three, I can move those three. Or if I just want to move these three, I can move those three. So it highlights the four. Whatever first one I click will deselect it from the group, allowing me to move the whole of the group. If I click and hold, then I can move the whole stack, which I want to do. So now these will fire along with these rocket. And if I highlight the parts on the build, it'll also highlight them on the staging. So right now this will let go of the rocket when these fire at the exact same time. But another thing is, I want this rocket to fire also. So right at the start, I want this rocket to fire, these will let go. All at the same time. Okay. Now, as you can see, we've got these radial decouplers. They're vertical versus horizontal. So let's go ahead and look at these vertical ones. Now it's showing it a group of 3 and 1 for some reason, but these are all these radial decouplers. If you have asparagus staging, which I'll show you later, where you're dropping each tank separately, then you want to separate each one of these. But the main idea is we want this to be the second stage. First stage, everything fires. These will run out of fuel before this, so I don't want to carry this weight. So the minute they're done, I want to detach them from this. So that's what these are. So firing the rockets, one set of rockets run out of fuel, we'll shed that weight. When this main stack burns out, we'll decouple it from our orbiter, our second ship. Right there, you'll see it. This whole section will fall down, and then we'll activate the engine on our second. Usually I don't activate the engines on my final stage, just in case if I forget to throttle down or I need to transfer fuel. So what I'll do is I'll keep the rocket. The last stages, I'll keep the rocket in decoupler. It just depends on how you want to do it. And then don't forget too, when we finally achieve our orbit and we want to break free and just deploy our satellite, will be our last decoupler. I want to keep it separate. This is where you would probably want to put maybe parachutes, but after when we hit this button, we no longer have any stages. That's it. We're done. So that's our build. I'm going to change the name. You just click up here, you can backspace, type in whatever you want. I'm going to do in probe A2 because I have an A1 I accidentally made, but I don't want to ruin it. We'll save. So there you go. There's our build. Hopefully this wasn't taking too long. It's about 35 minutes. Oh, I try to make it quick, but I promise I will do the flight quicker. So we'll put this on the pad, and then the next video will be showing you the basics, how to control everything we put on,